30 years ago in the Pennsylvania coal town I was brought up in, I was taught one thing, that I wouldn't make it unless I had an education. So I got the education, and that made the difference. Now I'm making it. I work for a space systems company. I supervise projects and people, deadlines, dates, schedules. I got the job because I have a BS in engineering, a master's in solid-state physics. The pay is good, but I'm on the road a lot. So when I'm in town, like now, I try to get home early and spend as much time as I can with my family. This is my wife, Fanny. We have 4 children, Ann and Susan, and Dwayne and Mike, the oldest. Four years ago, we lived in the Negro ghetto in central Los Angeles. Now we live in the white suburbs, 20 miles from the ghetto. We're the only Negro family in our community. We made the move mainly for our children, so that they could be free, so they could understand and grow up and be free. Four years ago, I saw this house. It was big, 4 bedrooms and a den. It was the kind of house I needed. The price was right. It was in good shape, only a couple years old. It was in a decent community and close to good schools. I could afford it, and I bought it. We moved in next Saturday. For Fanny, it was rough. She was born in the South, and she didn't feel right about this. It took guts for her to come out here. My buddies from the ghetto thought I was crazy to move out here. Why sweat it, they said. Well, a lot of Negro families have moved into the white suburbs around L.A., maybe a couple thousand families, and it's tough on them at first. But if we don't do it, who is? For me, the quickest way to know someone is to get close to that person. You'll never get to know him if you stay away from him. I had one good neighbor right off, a real, genuine human being. I can say this, I've known him 4 years now. He pitched right in without any baloney. He turned out to be a good friend, a regular guy. It was great. My neighbor brought over his wife and kids. That was a real break for Fanny. Some of my buddies who moved into the suburbs, every day when they went to work the first few months, their wives would take the kids and visit friends in the ghetto. And that's what Fanny figured she'd do. As it turned out, she wouldn't have to.
What's your name, Jamie? What's your name? Good, thank you. Can I have something? No alcohol in here, I don't know. Oh, thanks, Wade. Yeah, where's the beer? That's over here. Oh, that comes later. Yeah, the beer comes later. All right. Very good. Farmer's looking at you, Wade.
Living here is part of my children's education. They get to learn that the white's way of life, his aspirations, weren't any different than ours. There's no big mystery about it. We all live in the same boat, and we're all trying to make it. So we moved in, and we had one good neighbor, and that's a good start. Many people, black or white, don't even have that. A couple of neighbors cruised by to look at us. Good. Good for them. The sooner your neighbor gets to know you're there, the faster things should work out. And things did. Someone dumped garbage on our lawn that first night. I found it when I left for work in the morning. I stayed home with my family that day. Ron called a friend who was a good member of the local Lutheran church. He came right over. He and I figured that whoever dumped the garbage on my lawn should be stopped before anything else could happen. He figured the best bet was to get the neighborhood into a meeting as fast as possible. A good meeting might cool everything off. The minister felt the same way. He volunteered himself and whatever church members he could get to go throughout the neighborhood and get everyone into a meeting the next night. They hit it hard and kept at it. They got a sampling of the feelings in the neighborhood. Some people didn't care, one way or the other. Some were angry about the garbage being dumped on my lawn, and some didn't want me in the neighborhood.
Why not? This is a big problem because it happens everywhere in the city.
The meeting next night was packed. Everyone had a chance to speak. The ones for me, the ones against me. Some of them were afraid the neighborhood would be invaded with Negroes. Others that the value of their homes would go down. Others that their kids would marry my kids. The minister and a couple of his church members pointed out that all these concerns were myths. They were absolutely unimportant to what had to be done. First, I was a fact of life. I was there. Now, what are you going to do? Get out or stay? If you want to get out, go. But remember, you're leaving a good community. If you stay, rest, relax, sit it out, and get to know me a little bit. My door is open, and I'm keeping it open. I'm keeping it open for my kids and for your kids. In 4 years, we had a couple of good friends in the neighborhood. A couple of families moved away. A Negro family moved in a year after we did. The neighborhood relaxed. The kids got along at school. We had some parties. some good times, and we're still learning about each other. What else is life about?
The big population growth is just one reminder of years past in California. Another is the celebration of Black History Month. Today, a look at the settlement of one area of Los Angeles by people who might be considered black pioneers. Ann Curry reports.
This government film documents the courage of Wade and Fannie Rice, one of the first black families who dared to move into the valley's white neighborhoods.
People panicked, signs went up immediately for sale. I can never forget the day that I first moved in, where people looking out of the windows, looking at us moving in.
Though the film is actually a reenactment, it captured the family's real torture in 1961, moving into hostile territory with a shotgun so that their children could go to better schools. Neighbors harassed them, but Wade Rice never moved from that house in Northridge. Today, he still remembers the pain.
And I can remember very strongly that my kid was playing with the kids on the street. One of the kids said, "Michael, you can't go swim with us today." And tears come in my kid's eyes.
They didn't want him to swim with them
That's right.
because he was black?
Yes. He could play with them during the day, play baseball with them during the day, but when it comes to swimming activities and parties, he could not participate.
Wade Rice had crossed the line. This line of railroad tracks that divided blacks from whites. What was then considered the wrong side is now considered Pacoima. Tom Montgomery, fresh from World War II, moved to Pacoima. He and his wife Evelyn then discovered banks systematically would not qualify blacks wanting loans to live elsewhere in the valley.
You don't qualify. But then I could come in this community and pick the same sort of house, same square footage, and I would qualify without all the hassle. So they make it easy for you to stay in the ghetto.
Tom Montgomery stayed in Pacoima a fighter and won neighborhood improvements and community respect. His wife Evelyn stood by him.
Well, I'm going to be frank. I wasn't a fighter at first, but being married to this man for 40 years, and he believed in fighting for what he believed in, and 99% of the time he's right.
He joined marches for fair housing. Wade Rice marched too, and the valley began to change.
No, it's amazing to walk around the neighborhood now and you see little black kids, and I just, my mind rolled back 25 or 30 years and said, I wonder if they realize what the old folks have really gone through so they can have this opportunity to live in a neighborhood like this.
The lesson he would teach them is one he will try to pass on to his granddaughter, Michelle. Don't waste time hating your oppressors. Get involved with your community and keep on fighting.
Somebody's got to take the risk. Somebody got to take the gamble. Somebody got to step forward. And I was willing to do it.
No regrets?
No regrets. I'm glad we did it. I would do it again.
He likes to think he's helped plant a seed. Ann Curry, Channel 2 News.
Both Rice and Montgomery say there's much more work that needs to be done because the fight for equality still is not over.